I stood alone in my cap and gown outside the empty graduation venue at 7 p.m., clutching my phone with 17 unanswered calls to my family. The parking lot stretched before me like a desert of broken promises. When I finally opened the group text thread I had been mysteriously excluded from, my heart stopped. There it was in black and white. My parents, Sister Madison, and brother Tyler had planned to skip my graduation to attend our cousin's barbecue instead. The final message from my mother read like a knife to my chest. She won't even notice we're gone. Doreen's too self-absorbed anyway. My valedictorian speech papers scattered in the wind as my world shattered completely. The drive home felt like traveling through a tunnel of disbelief. Every red light gave me another moment to process what had just happened. 4 years of sleepless nights, countless hours in the library, sacrificing social events and relationships to maintain my 4.0 grade average, all leading to this moment when my own family chose potato salad over my proudest achievement. I pulled into our driveway in suburban Wilmington, Delaware, and immediately noticed the absence of any cars. The house sat dark, except for the porch light, which my mother always left on when she expected me home late. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt hollow. Walking through the front door, I called out tentatively, "Hello? Anyone home?" My voice echoed through the empty hallways. The living room showed clear evidence of hasty departure. Throw pillows askew on the couch, television still playing the evening news, and most telling of all, a collection of dirty dishes stacked on the kitchen counter from what appeared to be a quick meal before heading out. I wandered into the kitchen and found remnants of their preparation for the barbecue. Aluminum foil containers that once held store-bought side dishes sat in the garbage can. A handwritten note in my mother's cursive script lay crumpled on the counter. "Don't forget the ice cream for Janet's kids." Even in my state of shock, the irony struck me. My mother remembered ice cream for my cousin's children, but forgot her own daughter's graduation ceremony. The sound of car doors slamming in the driveway around 10:30 p.m. jolted me from my position, curled up on the living room chair. I heard familiar voices approaching the front door, their laughter carrying through the night air like salt in an open wound. My father's booming voice dominated the conversation, recounting some apparently hilarious moment from the afternoon's festivities. "Robert, you should have seen Janet's face when little Tommy jumped in the pool fully clothed." My mother giggled, her voice bright with the kind of joy I had hoped to hear directed toward my accomplishments today. The front door opened, and my family poured in carrying leftover containers and lawn chairs. They stopped short when they saw me sitting in the darkened living room, still wearing my graduation gown. "Oh," my mother said, her smile fading slightly. "You're home already. How was the thing?" The thing. My college graduation ceremony was simply the thing. It was my graduation, Mom. My college graduation that you promised to attend 6 months ago when I gave you the date. My father, Robert, set down a cooler with unnecessary force. "Look, Doreen, it's just a ceremony. You already have the degree. The paper doesn't change whether we sit in uncomfortable chairs for 3 hours watching thousands of names get called." "But you made a commitment," I protested, standing up so quickly that my graduation cap fell to the floor. "You RSVP'd yes to the university. You marked it on the calendar. You told me you'd be there." Madison, my 20-year-old sister, rolled her eyes as she kicked off her sandals. "God, Doreen, why do you always have to make everything about you?" Janet was really excited about this barbecue, and it's not like your graduation was some huge surprise. You've been talking about it for months. "Exactly," I exclaimed. "I've been talking about it for months because it was important to me." My mother, Patricia, moved to the kitchen and began unpacking leftover food with deliberate precision. "Honey, you know how much Janet has been struggling since she dropped out of school. This barbecue was her chance to feel good about something. Your graduation would have just made her feel worse about her own situation." The words hit me like a physical blow. "So you chose to protect Janet's feelings over celebrating my achievement? It's called being considerate of other people," Madison chimed in, flopping onto the couch. "Something you might want to try sometime." Tyler, my 17-year-old brother, remained silent throughout this exchange, staring at his phone with the kind of intense focus that suggested he was desperately trying to become invisible. His silence hurt almost as much as everyone else's words. "I worked for 4 years, I said, my voice beginning to shake. 4 years of academic scholarships, Dean's List every semester, graduating summa cum laude. And you think sitting through my ceremony would be an inconvenience? My father loosened his tie and settled into his recliner. Doreen, you're being dramatic. We celebrated when you got accepted to college. We celebrated when you made Dean's List the first time. How many celebrations do you need? This is college graduation, Dad. This happens once in a lifetime. And Janet's barbecue also happens once, my mother countered. She specifically planned it for today because it's Memorial Day weekend and everyone could come. Your graduation was scheduled on the same day. We had to make a choice. I stared at the 3 people who were supposed to love me most in the world. And you chose Janet. We chose family loyalty over personal ego, Madison said, not looking up from her phone. The conversation might have continued, but I noticed something that made my blood turn cold. Peeking out from under a stack of mail on the kitchen counter was a corner of what looked like an expensive envelope. I walked over and pulled it free, recognizing immediately the embossed return address of my maternal grandparents in Florida. "What's this?" I asked, holding up the unopened envelope addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Gerald Hampton in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. My mother's face went pale. "Oh, that. It came a few days ago." I tore open the envelope and found a check for $200 made out to my parents, along with a note in my grandmother's handwriting. "For travel expenses to attend Doreen's graduation. We're so proud of her and sorry we can't make the trip ourselves. Please give her our love and tell her we'll be thinking of her on her special day." "My grandparents sent you money to come to my graduation," I whispered. "Well, we didn't ask for it," my father grumbled. "But you kept it." The room fell silent except for the ticking of the wall clock in the kitchen. "I need to call them," I said, reaching for my phone. "It's almost 11 p.m., my mother protested. "They'll be asleep." "They stayed up waiting to hear how the graduation went. They probably think you're on your way home from the ceremony right now." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. In that moment, I realized my family had not only abandoned me, but they had also betrayed my grandparents' trust and stolen their money under false pretenses. But the worst discovery was yet to come. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had been hollowed out from the inside. The events of the previous day played on repeat in my mind, each detail more painful than the last. I found my mother in the kitchen, making coffee as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said in a tone so casual it made my skin crawl. "There's fresh coffee if you want some." I poured myself a cup and sat at the kitchen table where I had done homework for countless years. "Mom, I've been thinking about yesterday." "Oh, honey, let's not dwell on that. What's done is done. Besides, I'm sure your graduation was lovely." "You wouldn't know because you weren't there." Patricia sighed and leaned against the counter. "Doreen, I've been patient with your dramatic reaction, but this tantrum needs to stop. You're a college graduate now. It's time to start acting like an adult instead of throwing a fit when things don't go exactly your way." "Throwing a fit?" I set my coffee cup down harder than necessary. My family skipping my graduation is not things failing to go my way. It's a fundamental betrayal of trust. You're being ridiculously overdramatic. It was one afternoon. One ceremony. You'll have plenty of other important days in your life. Before I could respond, Madison wandered into the kitchen wearing pajamas and an expression of supreme annoyance. "Are you seriously still going on about this?" she asked, opening the refrigerator. "I thought you'd be over it by now." "Get over my family abandoning me on one of the most important days of my life? How long is that supposed to take?" Madison grabbed a yogurt and spun around to face me. "Look, I'm going to be honest with you because no one else will. We didn't go to your graduation because, frankly, we're all sick of everything being about Doreen all the time. Doreen made Dean's List. Doreen got a scholarship. Doreen this, Doreen that. The rest of us have lives too." I stared at my sister in disbelief. "So you punished me for working hard and succeeding?" "We didn't punish you. We just chose to do something that was actually fun for once, instead of sitting through another event where you get praised for being perfect." My mother nodded in agreement. "Madison has a point, honey. You do tend to dominate conversations with your achievements. Sometimes the rest of the family feels a little overlooked. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My own family was criticizing me for doing well in school, for working hard, for trying to make something of myself. I had spent years believing that my academic success made them proud, but apparently, It only made them resentful. Over the following days, the situation only got worse. I overheard my mother on the phone with our neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, spinning a completely different version of events. "Oh, you know how emotional young people can be," Patricia was saying. "Doreen got upset because we couldn't stay for the entire ceremony. We were there for the important part, of course, but we had to leave early for a family obligation. Now she's acting like we missed the whole thing. She's always been prone to exaggeration when she doesn't get her way." I confronted her immediately after she hung up. "You told Mrs. Peterson that you came to my graduation." I said we were there for the important part. "What part? You weren't there for any part." "The important part is that you graduated. Whether we witnessed it or not doesn't change that fact." I realized then that my family was not only unapologetic about missing my graduation, but they were actively rewriting history to make themselves look better and me look unstable. The breaking point came 3 days later when I decided to clean out my childhood bedroom, thinking that focusing on something productive might help me process my emotions. I climbed into the attic to look for storage boxes and discovered something that made my blood freeze. Hidden behind Christmas decorations and old furniture was a cardboard box labeled Doreen, school stuff in my mother's handwriting. Inside, I found years' worth of report cards, academic awards, honor roll certificates, and school photos that I had never seen displayed anywhere in our house. My elementary school principal's award for outstanding academic achievement, my middle school science fair first place ribbon, my high school National Honor Society certificate, academic letters from every year of high school, perfect attendance awards, student of the month certificates, scholarship notification letters. Every single recognition I had ever received was hidden away in this attic like shameful secrets. I sat in that dusty attic space holding evidence that my family had been systematically hiding my accomplishments for years. While other families proudly displayed their children's achievements on refrigerators and walls, mine had buried them in boxes where no one could see them. But the most devastating discovery was at the bottom of the box, a letter from my high school guidance counselor recommending me for a full-ride scholarship to Harvard University. A letter I had never seen. A scholarship opportunity that had passed by because the application deadline had expired while this letter sat hidden in an attic box. I carried the box downstairs and found my mother folding laundry in the living room. "What is this?" I demanded, setting the box on the coffee table. Patricia glanced at the contents and continued folding towels. "Old school papers. I was saving them for you." "Saving them? You were hiding them. Why aren't any of these displayed anywhere? Why have I never seen this letter about Harvard?" "Oh, that old thing. I didn't think you'd be interested in Harvard. Too far from home, too expensive, too pretentious. You were already accepted to University of Delaware with a good scholarship. Why complicate things? You kept me from applying to Harvard because you thought it was too pretentious? I kept you from making a mistake that would have taken you away from your family and filled your head with ideas about being better than everyone else." In that moment, I understood everything. My family had not forgotten my graduation accidentally or chosen the barbecue impulsively. This was part of a lifelong pattern of undermining my success and limiting my opportunities to keep me small and manageable. That evening, I overheard my mother on another phone call, this time with my Aunt Susan. "I'm worried about Doreen," Patricia was saying. "Ever since graduation, she's been acting strange, moody, accusatory, reading things into innocent situations. I think all that academic pressure might have affected her mentally. She's starting to see conspiracies where there aren't any. Maybe some distance from the family would help her gain some perspective and come back to reality." The irony was overwhelming. My mother was suggesting I needed distance from the family while simultaneously portraying me as mentally unstable for being hurt by their treatment. I went to my room and opened my laptop. If my family wanted distance, they would get more distance than they could possibly imagine. I spent the next several hours researching legal name change procedures in the state of Delaware. I learned about requirements, fees, and timelines. I researched cities across the country where I could start fresh. Then I remembered something my grandfather had mentioned at Christmas dinner 2 years earlier. He had set up a trust fund for my education that would become accessible to me upon college graduation. My parents knew about the fund, but they didn't know the details because my grandfather had handled everything through his lawyer in Florida. I called my grandfather's attorney the next morning and learned that the trust contained enough money to support me for several years while I established myself independently. The funds were entirely under my control, requiring no input or approval from my parents. That night, I made my decision. If my family wanted to treat me like an outsider, I would become one completely. I would change my name, move far away, and build a life where my achievements were celebrated instead of hidden, where my success was welcomed instead of resented. I had given them countless opportunities to apologize, to acknowledge the hurt they had caused, to show even the smallest amount of remorse for missing the most important day of my academic career. Instead, they had doubled down on their behavior and begun questioning my mental stability for having normal emotional reactions to their betrayal. As I lay in bed that night, listening to my family laughing at a television show downstairs, I realized I was grieving not just for my missed graduation, but for the loss of the family I thought I had. The parents I believed were proud of me. The siblings I thought were my supporters. The people I had spent 22 years trying to please and impress. They had shown me exactly who they were and how little they valued me. Now it was time for me to show them who I could become without them. 3 months later, I stood in a courthouse in Portland, Oregon, officially becoming Elena Morrison. The judge smiled warmly as she signed the documents, treating this moment with the respect and significance that my family had denied my graduation day. I had chosen Elena because it meant bright light in Greek, and Morrison because it meant son of the sea. I was starting fresh as a bright light by the sea, 2,900 miles from the people who had tried to dim my shine. My new studio apartment overlooked the Willamette River from the 15th floor of a modern building in the Pearl District. The rent was higher than anything I could have afforded in Delaware, but my grandfather's trust fund provided financial freedom I had never imagined. More importantly, I was earning my own money now as a junior marketing coordinator for a sustainable technology company called Green Future Innovations. The job interview process had been a revelation. When I walked into their offices wearing a professional blazer and carrying a portfolio of my academic projects, I was treated with the respect and attention that my achievements deserved. The hiring manager, a woman named Jennifer Walsh, had been genuinely impressed by my academic record and my internship experiences. Summa cum laude, in marketing with a minor in environmental science? That's exactly the combination we're looking for, Jennifer had said during our meeting. Your thesis on sustainable consumer behavior patterns shows exactly the kind of analytical thinking we need on our team. I had almost cried right there in the conference room. Someone was excited about my accomplishments instead of minimizing them. Someone saw my academic success as an asset instead of a source of resentment. My first day at work felt like stepping into an alternate universe. My colleagues introduced themselves warmly, asked thoughtful questions about my background, and seemed genuinely interested in my ideas during team meetings. When I contributed suggestions for improving their client outreach strategies, people took notes instead of rolling their eyes. Elena, that's a brilliant point about targeting younger demographics through environmental advocacy groups, said my supervisor, David Chen, during my first team meeting. I think we should develop that concept further. Would you be willing to put together a proposal? I walked out of that meeting feeling lighter than I had in years. In my family, any suggestion or idea I offered was met with eye rolls, sighs, or comments about me trying to show off. Here, my input was valued and encouraged. My apartment building was full of young professionals who treated each other with kindness and respect. I struck up a friendship with my next-door neighbor, Carmen Rodriguez, a third-grade teacher who had moved to Portland from Arizona the previous year. Carmen was the kind of person who knocked on my door to offer homemade cookies and check that I was settling in okay. I know how hard it can be to start over in a new city, she said during one of our early conversations. When I moved here, I felt so lonely for the first few months. Having good neighbors makes all the difference. Carmen became my first genuine friend in years. With my family, every interaction had been loaded with judgment, competition, or criticism. Carmen and I could talk about everything from our work challenges to our favorite books to our dreams for the future. She celebrated my small victories at work and offered comfort when I had difficult days. This, I realized, was what healthy relationships looked like. Over the weeks, I began to understand how severely my family had damaged my self-perception. I had spent years believing I was selfish for wanting recognition for my hard work, dramatic for having emotional reactions to being dismissed, and self-absorbed for sharing my accomplishments. Living independently and forming new relationships showed me that these beliefs were completely false. When I received my first promotion at work after only 2 months, becoming a marketing specialist with a significant salary increase. Carmen insisted on taking me out for a celebratory dinner. "You have to stop apologizing for being successful," she told me over pasta at a cozy Italian restaurant. "Every time you tell me about something good that happens at work, you add a disclaimer about not wanting to brag. Success isn't something to apologize for. It's something to celebrate." Her words hit me like a revelation. I had been unconsciously minimizing my achievements even in my new life, carrying my family's messages with me like invisible chains. As autumn turned to winter, my life in Portland became everything I had never dared to hope for. I was excelling at work, building meaningful friendships, exploring a beautiful city, and most importantly, learning to value myself the way I deserved to be valued. I had not contacted my family since leaving Delaware, and they had not attempted to find me. The silence was initially painful but gradually became peaceful. I realized that my family's absence from my life was not a loss but a liberation. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening in November, my phone rang with a call from an unknown Delaware number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello? Doreen? Oh my God. Thank God I found you." It was Tyler's voice, and he sounded panicked. "How did you get this number?" I asked, my heart racing. "I hired someone to find you through your college alumni records. Listen, I know you're probably angry, but something really bad has happened. Dad's been arrested." I felt my stomach drop. Arrested for what? Embezzling money from his construction company. Like, a lot of money. The FBI came to the house with a warrant. They took computers, files, everything. Mom is falling apart. Madison's freaking out, and the lawyers are saying he could go to prison for 10 years. I sat down heavily on my couch, processing this information. How long has this been going on? We don't know. Maybe years. The company's been using cheap materials on construction projects and billing clients for expensive stuff. Dad was keeping the difference. But one of the buildings they worked on last year had a partial collapse, and now there's a federal investigation. Is anyone hurt? No one was seriously injured, but there could have been. The whole thing is a nightmare. Look, I know you and the family had that fight about graduation, but we need you to come home. We need help with the legal fees, and honestly, Mom and Madison are barely functioning. I stared out my apartment window at the Portland skyline, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated that my father's dishonest character had finally caught up with him. Part of me felt sorry for Tyler, who had always been caught in the middle. But most of me felt angry that they only wanted to reconnect when they needed something from me. "Tyler, I'm not coming home. And I'm not Doreen anymore. I legally changed my name. I live in Oregon now, and I have a new life here." "What? You changed your name? Elena? Why would you do that?" "Because the people who knew Doreen treated her terribly, and I decided I deserved better." There was a long pause. "Look, I know Mom and Dad and Madison were wrong about the graduation thing. I should have stood up for you, and I'm sorry I didn't. But this is family, and family helps each other when things get bad. Family also celebrates each other's achievements and shows up for important moments," I replied. "Family doesn't hide your accomplishments in attic boxes or lie to neighbors about why they missed your graduation. You found the box?" His question confirmed what I already suspected. Tyler had known about my parents hiding my achievements. "Yes, I found the box. I also found the letter about Harvard that they never showed me. How long have you known about all of this?" Another pause. "Mom always said you got enough attention for your grades and awards. She thought if they made a big deal about every little thing, you'd get a big head and think you were better than everyone else. So you all decided to systematically undermine my self-esteem instead?" "It wasn't like that. At least, I didn't think it was like that at the time. But sitting here now with everything falling apart, I'm starting to see things differently." I appreciated Tyler's honesty, but I wasn't ready to forgive years of complicity in my family's emotional abuse just because he was having a moment of clarity during a crisis. "I'm sorry about Dad's situation, and I'm sorry your family is struggling, but I'm not coming back to Delaware, and I'm not paying for legal fees for someone who stole money and put people's lives at risk with substandard construction. Elena, please. I know we messed up, but we're desperate. You're desperate now. Where was this desperation to maintain a relationship with me when I was desperate for your support during graduation? Where was this family unity when I needed it? I hung up the phone and turned it off completely. I didn't want to deal with more calls or guilt trips. I had built a good life in Portland, and I wasn't going to let my family's crisis drag me back into their dysfunction. But Tyler's call had shaken me more than I wanted to admit. Despite everything they had done, these were still the people who had raised me. Learning about my father's criminal behavior and my family's financial ruin brought up complicated emotions that I wasn't sure how to process. I called Carmen and asked if she wanted to come over for tea and conversation. Within 20 minutes, she was at my door with a box of chamomile tea and a container of homemade cookies. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, settling onto my couch. "What happened?" I told her everything. About my family, about graduation, about changing my name and moving to Portland, and about Tyler's phone call. Carmen listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions and offering perspective when I needed it. "The question isn't whether your family is in crisis," she said finally. "The question is whether helping them now would be healthy for you or if it would just drag you back into the same patterns that hurt you before." That night, I made a decision that would define the next chapter of my life. I would not return to Delaware or provide financial support for my father's legal troubles, but I would continue monitoring the situation from a distance, and I would be prepared to respond if circumstances changed in ways that required my intervention. I had no idea that within 6 months, I would be in a position to control my family's entire future. Winter melted into spring, and my life in Portland continued to flourish. I had been promoted again, this time to senior marketing specialist, and my salary had increased substantially. My work on sustainable consumer outreach campaigns had caught the attention of Green Future's executive team, and I was being considered for a fast-track leadership development program. Meanwhile, I kept track of my family's situation through local Delaware news websites and social media monitoring. The information I discovered was worse than Tyler had initially revealed during his desperate phone call. Robert Morrison, as my father was now listed in court documents, had been running a sophisticated embezzlement scheme for over 5 years. His construction company, Morrison Building Solutions, had been billing clients for premium materials while purchasing substandard alternatives, pocketing the difference through a complex system of shell companies and fraudulent invoicing. The total amount stolen exceeded $800,000, but the financial fraud was only part of the story. The building that had partially collapsed was a low-income housing complex, and while no one had been killed, several elderly residents had been hospitalized with injuries. Civil lawsuits were mounting, and the federal investigation had expanded to include charges of reckless endangerment and conspiracy. My mother's troubles had begun when her supervisor at Delaware General Hospital started noticing discrepancies in patient medication records. Patricia had been falsifying documentation to cover instances when she had given patients incorrect dosages or forgotten to administer medications entirely. When confronted with evidence, she had broken down and confessed to struggling with alcohol addiction that had impaired her judgment for months. She was terminated immediately and reported to the state nursing board. Her license was suspended pending a formal review, and she was facing potential criminal charges for patient endangerment. Between losing her $60,000 annual salary and my father's legal troubles, the family's financial situation had become desperate. Madison had dropped out of University of Delaware halfway through her junior year, unable to afford tuition once my parents' financial support disappeared. She was working at a fast food restaurant, earning minimum wage while living in my parents' house, which was now in foreclosure proceedings. Tyler had lost his academic scholarship due to failing grades. According to social media posts I found, he was working 2 jobs, stocking shelves at a grocery store during the day and washing dishes at a restaurant at night. He was trying to save money to return to college, but with his family's financial crisis, most of his earnings went toward basic household expenses. What disturbed me most was discovering how my family had been talking about me during their crisis. Through mutual acquaintances on social media, I learned that Patricia had been telling extended family members and neighbors that I had abandoned the family during their darkest hour and was too selfish and self-absorbed to help my own parents. Worse yet, I discovered they had been using my academic achievements to solicit money from our church congregation and extended family. Patricia had created a sob story about how their brilliant daughter who graduated summa cum laude had been in a serious car accident and was facing enormous medical bills. They claimed to be raising money for my recovery while simultaneously telling people I had cut off all contact with the family. The discovery that they were exploiting my reputation while destroying it with lies about my character was infuriating. They had spent years minimizing my accomplishments, but now they were profiting from them through deception. I hired a private investigator in Delaware to gather more detailed information about their activities. What I learned was even more disturbing. My parents had somehow gained access to credit cards that had been issued in my former name, Doreen Morrison, and had accumulated over $30,000 in debt. They were using these accounts for everything from groceries to legal fees, apparently believing that because I had legally changed my name, I would not be held responsible for the debt. They had also filed a missing person report with the Delaware State Police, claiming I had disappeared after suffering a mental breakdown following graduation. The police report included false statements about my mental health history and alleged financial problems. They portrayed themselves as worried parents desperately searching for their unstable daughter. When I contacted the Delaware State Police to clarify my status, I learned that my family had been calling regularly to provide updates on their search efforts and to request assistance in locating me. They had painted a picture of a young woman with psychological issues who might be a danger to herself. The more I investigated, the more I realized that my family's manipulation and exploitation had not ended when I left Delaware. If anything, they had intensified their efforts to control and damage me from a distance. But I was no longer the powerless young woman who had stood alone outside her graduation ceremony. I was Elena Morrison now, a successful professional with financial resources and legal knowledge. And I was about to use both to protect myself and potentially help the only family member who had shown any genuine remorse for their behavior. I contacted Tyler through a secure email address and asked him to call me from a public phone at a specific time. When he called, I explained what I had discovered about our parents' activities. "They're using credit cards in my old name and telling people I was in a car accident to raise money?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Among other things. Tyler, they've committed identity theft, fraud, and filing false police reports. These are serious felonies that could result in additional prison time beyond what Dad is already facing." I had no idea. I knew they were desperate for money, but I didn't know they were doing anything illegal with your identity. "I believe you, but I need to know. Are you willing to help me stop them?" There was a long pause. "What do you mean?" I'm in a position to take legal action that could either destroy our parents completely or potentially help them avoid additional criminal charges. But I need someone on the inside who can provide information and testimony about what's been happening. What kind of legal action? I can have them arrested for identity theft and fraud. I can sue them for defamation and emotional distress. I can make sure the police know they filed false missing person reports. Or I can offer them a way out that involves accountability and making amends. You want to give them a choice? I want to give you a choice, Tyler. Our parents made their choices when they decided to exploit and lie about me. But you've acknowledged that what happened was wrong, and you've shown genuine remorse. If you're willing to help ensure they face consequences and make changes, I might be willing to offer alternatives to criminal prosecution. Tyler agreed to gather evidence of our parents' activities and report back to me within 2 weeks. He also confirmed something I had suspected. They had no idea where I was living or what I was doing professionally. They assumed I was struggling financially and emotionally, which had emboldened them to continue their exploitation. During this time, my life in Portland reached new heights of success. I was selected for Green Future's Executive Leadership Program and received another promotion to Regional Marketing Coordinator. My salary had doubled since I started working there, and I was being mentored by some of the most innovative professionals in sustainable technology marketing. More importantly, I had begun dating Marcus Chen, an architect who worked for a firm specializing in eco-friendly building design. Marcus was everything my family was not: supportive, encouraging, honest, and genuinely excited about my professional achievements. When I told him about receiving the leadership program acceptance, he took me out for a celebratory dinner and insisted on calling his parents to share the good news. "I'm so proud of you," he said, raising his wine glass in a toast. "You're going to change the world with your ideas about sustainable marketing." Sitting across from Marcus in that restaurant, I realized how much my self-worth had grown since leaving my family behind. I no longer apologized for my success or downplayed my achievements. I had learned to accept praise gracefully and to celebrate my victories without guilt. 2 weeks later, Tyler called with information that would change everything. "Elena, it's worse than we thought. Mom and Dad aren't just using your old credit cards. They've been forging your signature on documents to try to access your college fund from Grandpa. They what? I found papers in Dad's office where they were trying to claim legal authority over your trust fund because you were declared a missing person with mental health issues. They had documents claiming they were your legal guardians due to incompetence. The audacity was breathtaking. Not only had my parents been exploiting my reputation and stealing money in my name, but they were also attempting to gain control of my inheritance through fraudulent legal maneuvers. Tyler, I need you to copy those documents and any other evidence you can find, and I need you to understand that I'm done playing defense. It's time for me to take control of this situation completely. What are you going to do? I'm coming back to Delaware, but not as the victim they think I am. I'm coming back as someone with the power to determine their future. What my family didn't know was that over the past 6 months, I had been making strategic investments with my trust fund money. I had purchased stock in several companies, including Morrison Building Solutions' biggest competitor. I had also been monitoring the real estate market in Delaware, particularly properties in foreclosure. Their house, the house where I had grown up, was scheduled for foreclosure auction in 3 weeks, and I was prepared to buy it. My family was about to learn that the daughter they had underestimated and abandoned was now in a position to control their entire world. By early June, my transformation was complete in ways that would have seemed impossible 9 months earlier. I had been promoted to Regional Marketing Director for the Pacific Northwest, making me the youngest person in company history to hold that position. The promotion came with a salary increase that put me in the top 10% of earners in my age group, along with stock options and a comprehensive benefits package. My success had been featured in Portland Business Journal's 30 Under 30 Rising Stars issue, with a full-page article about my innovative approaches to sustainable marketing and my rapid career advancement. The article included a professional photo of me in a tailored blazer, standing confidently in Green Future's executive conference room, looking nothing like the heartbroken young woman who had stood alone outside her graduation ceremony. Marcus and I had been dating for 4 months, and our relationship had become the kind of partnership I had never imagined possible. He supported my career ambitions without feeling threatened, celebrated my successes without resentment, and treated my achievements as shared victories rather than personal inconveniences. "I love watching you present to clients," he told me after attending one of my business presentations. "You light up when you talk about your marketing strategies. It's like watching an artist discuss their masterpiece." These words would have made my family cringe with annoyance, but Marcus meant them sincerely. He genuinely enjoyed my professional passion and intelligence rather than feeling diminished by them. My Portland life was everything I had dreamed of. Meaningful work, genuine relationships, financial independence, and most importantly, an environment where I was valued for exactly who I was, rather than criticized for not being someone else. But my family's situation in Delaware continued to deteriorate in ways that defied belief. Tyler had been providing me with regular updates, and the picture he painted was one of complete dysfunction and escalating desperation. Robert's trial had been scheduled for September, with prosecutors seeking a 15-year prison sentence. The civil lawsuits from the injured residents had resulted in a judgment that would require my parents to pay over $2 million in damages, money they obviously did not have. Patricia's nursing license had been permanently revoked, and she was facing her own criminal charges for patient endangerment. She had begun drinking heavily, which had led to multiple incidents of public intoxication and a suspended driver's license. Madison had been fired from her fast food job for poor attendance and attitude problems. She was now unemployed and spending her days posting angry rants on social media about how the family's problems were somehow my fault for abandoning them. But the most disturbing development was what Tyler discovered about their continued exploitation of my identity and reputation. "Elena, you need to know what they're doing now," Tyler said during one of our weekly calls. "Mom has been contacting every scholarship foundation, academic organization, and university program you were ever associated with. She's claiming you're missing and psychologically unstable, and she's asking them to provide financial assistance to the family." "She's what?" "She told your college's alumni association that you disappeared after graduation and they're worried you might harm yourself. She asked them to contribute to a fund for family support during this difficult time. She's been making similar calls to your high school, the National Honor Society, even the library where you volunteered." The scope of their manipulation was staggering. My parents were systematically contacting every institution that had recognized my achievements, spinning false stories about my mental health and family loyalty to generate sympathy and financial support. It gets worse, Tyler continued. I found out they hired a private investigator to try to find you. But they're not looking for you to reconcile. They want to have you declared mentally incompetent so they can gain legal control of your trust fund. That's not how trust funds work, Tyler. They can't just have me declared incompetent to access my money. I know. But they don't understand that. Dad's been meeting with some sketchy lawyer who's telling them they can challenge your mental competence if they can prove you're estranged from family and making irrational decisions. I had to admire the irony. My family was calling me mentally incompetent for making the rational decision to distance myself from people who treated me poorly. But then Tyler revealed something that changed my entire perspective on the situation. Elena, there's something else. Carmen Rodriguez contacted Mom last week. My blood went cold. What do you mean Carmen contacted Mom? Someone claiming to be your neighbor in Portland called the house. She said she was worried about you and wanted to know if there was any family history of mental illness or erratic behavior that might explain some things she'd observed. That's impossible. Carmen would never do that. I thought the same thing, so I asked Mom to play me the voicemail. Elena, it wasn't your friend. Someone was impersonating your neighbor to get information about you. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Madison hired her own private investigator. That's what I think. And whoever they hired has figured out where you live and probably where you work. Mom mentioned that the fake Carmen person knew specific details about your apartment building and mentioned seeing you with some guy who might be your boyfriend. My sense of security and privacy had been completely violated. My family had not only continued their manipulation and fraud, but they had now invaded my new life in Portland through hired investigators and impersonation. I immediately called Carmen to warn her that someone might contact her claiming to be from my family. Actually, Elena, something weird did happen last week, Carmen said. A woman called claiming to be your sister, asking if I was worried about your mental health. I told her I had no idea what she was talking about and hung up. But it was really strange. Carmen, I need to tell you something about my family situation. I explained everything to Carmen. The graduation betrayal, my name change, my family's financial and legal troubles, and their ongoing attempts to exploit my identity. Carmen listened with growing amazement and anger. Elena, this is harassment and stalking. You need to take legal action. I've been thinking about that. But I want to handle this in a way that protects me while also potentially helping the one family member who's shown genuine remorse. You mean your brother? Tyler's been honest with me about everything that's happening. He's also been trying to minimize the damage they're causing. But I think it's time for me to take control of this situation completely. That evening, I made a decision that would demonstrate exactly how much power I had gained during my 9 months of independence. I researched the foreclosure auction for my childhood home and discovered that the minimum bid was set at $275,000, which was significantly less than the house's actual value due to the circumstances of the foreclosure. I also learned that Roberts Construction Company's remaining assets, including equipment and vehicles worth over $100,000, were being auctioned separately to pay creditors. Using my investment resources and a business loan that my excellent credit score made easy to obtain, I arranged to purchase both the house and the construction company assets through a shell corporation I established called Northwest Holdings, LLC. My family would lose their home to foreclosure, but they would unknowingly become tenants of their estranged daughter. Robert's business would be dissolved, but all his equipment and vehicles would be owned by the young woman they had tried to destroy. More importantly, I would have complete leverage to dictate the terms of any future relationship, or to ensure they faced full legal consequences for their fraud and harassment. I also hired my own attorney, specializing in identity theft and defamation cases, to document every instance of my family's illegal activities. The evidence Tyler had gathered, combined with my own investigation, provided a solid foundation for multiple felony charges that could result in significant prison time for both my parents. But before taking any legal action, I decided to return to Delaware for the first time since leaving. I wanted to confront my family face to face, not as the powerless victim they remembered, but as the successful, independent woman I had become. I booked a flight to Philadelphia for the week after the foreclosure auction, planning to arrive in Delaware as the new owner of their former home. I arranged to stay at a luxury hotel in downtown Wilmington and rented a high-end luxury car for the occasion. Marcus offered to come with me for moral support, but I declined. This was something I needed to handle alone. "Just promise me you'll be safe," he said as he drove me to the airport. "These people sound dangerous, and I'm worried about how they might react when they realize you're not the broken person they expect you to be." "They're not dangerous, Marcus. They're just small, petty people who have been getting away with bad behavior for too long. It's time for them to face consequences." As my plane took off from Portland International Airport, I looked down at the city where I had rebuilt my life and found my true self. In less than 48 hours, I would walk back into the world that had tried to destroy me. But this time I would be holding all the power. My family was about to learn that the daughter they had underestimated was now in a position to determine their entire future. The foreclosure auction took place on a humid Tuesday morning in late June outside the Newcastle County Courthouse. I watched from my rental car, a sleek black BMW that cost more per day than my family's current weekly income, as my childhood home was sold to the highest bidder. Northwest Holdings LLC, my shell corporation, won the auction with a bid of $280,000. The house where I had grown up, where my achievements had been hidden in attic boxes, where my family had planned to skip my graduation over breakfast, was now mine. Standing on the courthouse steps afterward, I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This was the house where I had learned to read, where I had done homework at the kitchen table for 12 years, where I had dreamed of my future success. Now it belonged to me not through inheritance or family gift, but through my own financial power. I drove through my old neighborhood, noting how little had changed. The same aging ranch houses, the same cracked sidewalks, the same limited horizons that my family had never wanted to expand beyond. Mrs. Peterson was still tending her garden next door, probably unaware that the young woman she had known as Doreen was now her neighbor's landlord. 3 days later, I pulled into the driveway of my former home at exactly 10 a.m., wearing a tailored navy business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. The house looked smaller than I remembered, with peeling paint and an overgrown lawn that suggested my family had given up on maintenance months ago. I knocked on the front door of what was now my property and waited. Madison answered, and her expression shifted from confusion to shock, to something approaching terror as she recognized me. "Oh my God. Doreen? Actually, it's Elena now. Elena Morrison. I believe we need to have a conversation." Madison stood frozen in the doorway, taking in my professional appearance and obvious success. I looked nothing like the devastated young woman who had left this house 9 months earlier. "Mom! Dad!" Madison called frantically. "You need to come here right now." Patricia appeared first, her hair unwashed and her clothes wrinkled, looking years older than when I had last seen her. When she saw me, her face went white. "Doreen, where have you?" "I told you, it's Elena now. And I think you know exactly where I've been, considering you've been having me investigated and impersonating my friends to get information about my life." Robert emerged from the living room, and the change in his appearance was startling. The confident, dismissive man I remembered had been replaced by someone who looked defeated and desperate. His face was gaunt, his posture slouched, and his eyes held the hollow look of someone whose entire world was crumbling. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice lacking its former authority. "I'm here to discuss the future. May I come in?" "I think we have quite a bit to talk about." I walked past them into the living room without waiting for an invitation. The house smelled stale and felt heavy with desperation. Bills and legal documents were scattered across every surface. Empty beer bottles suggested Patricia's drinking problem had worsened considerably. Tyler appeared from the kitchen, and unlike the others, his face showed relief rather than fear. "Elena, thank God you're okay. When you stopped answering my calls, I was worried something had happened." "I'm more than okay, Tyler. I'm thriving, but we'll discuss that in a moment." I settled into my father's old recliner, the same chair where he had dismissed my graduation as unimportant 9 months earlier. The irony was not lost on me. "Please, sit down. All of you. We have business to discuss." My family exchanged uncertain glances but complied, sitting on the couch like children called to the principal's office. I opened my briefcase and removed a stack of documents, laying them on the coffee table with deliberate precision. "Let's start with the facts as I understand them. Robert, you're facing federal charges for embezzlement, fraud, and reckless endangerment that could result in 15 years in prison. Patricia, you've lost your nursing license and are facing criminal charges for patient endangerment. You've also been filing false police reports claiming I'm a missing person with mental health issues. I turned to Madison. You've been using credit cards issued in my former name to accumulate over $30,000 in debt. You've also been calling my college, my high school, and various organizations I was associated with, claiming I've disappeared and requesting financial assistance. Finally, I looked at my parents again. You've both been attempting to gain legal control of my trust fund through fraudulent claims of mental incompetence. You've hired private investigators to locate and monitor me without my consent. And you've been soliciting money from extended family and your church congregation by claiming I was injured in a car accident. The room was completely silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. Now, I continued, let me tell you where I've been and what I've been doing while you've been committing felonies in my name. I pulled out the Portland Business Journal article featuring my success story and placed it on the table. I live in Portland, Oregon, where I work as regional marketing director for a sustainable technology company. I've been promoted 3 times in 9 months. My annual salary is now $120,000. I've been featured in a major business magazine as one of the region's rising stars. I own a beautiful apartment overlooking the river, I drive a luxury car, and I'm in a relationship with a wonderful man who treats me with the respect and support that I deserve. Patricia stared at the magazine article as if it were written in a foreign language. But most importantly, I continued, 3 days ago, Northwest Holdings LLC, a company that I own, purchased this house at foreclosure auction for $280,000. The silence that followed was deafening. What does that mean? Robert asked finally. It means I am now your landlord. This house belongs to me. You are currently trespassing on my property. Madison made a sound that was half gasp, half sob. It also means, I continued, removing more documents from my briefcase, that I have purchased all the remaining assets of Morrison Building Solutions, including vehicles, equipment, and tools, for an additional $100,000. Robert's face had turned ashen. That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. Actually, I do. Grandfather's trust fund, combined with my investment returns and business loans that my excellent credit score made easy to obtain, provided more than enough capital for these purchases. I leaned forward slightly, maintaining eye contact with each of them. So let me explain your current situation clearly. You have no home, no business assets, no source of income, and you're facing multiple felony charges that could result in decades in prison. I, on the other hand, own everything you've lost and have documented evidence of every crime you've committed in my name over the past 9 months. This is impossible, Patricia whispered. You're our daughter. You can't do this to your own family. The same family that chose a barbecue over my college graduation? The same family that hid my achievements and sabotaged my scholarship opportunities? The same family that has been committing fraud in my name and spreading lies about my mental health? Tyler spoke for the first time since I had arrived. Elena, what do you want from us? That's an excellent question, Tyler. And the answer depends on whether you're all willing to accept accountability for your actions and make genuine changes to your behavior. I pulled out a final document, a legal agreement I had prepared with my attorney. I'm going to give you a choice that you certainly don't deserve, but that I'm offering anyway. You can face full criminal prosecution for identity theft, fraud, defamation, and filing false police reports. With the evidence I've gathered, you're looking at significant prison time for both parents and probable charges for Madison as well. I paused to let that sink in. Or you can accept my terms for avoiding criminal prosecution. These terms are non-negotiable and must be accepted by all of you immediately. What terms? Tyler asked. First, you will immediately cease all fraudulent activities involving my identity or reputation. You will contact every organization you've lied to and confess your deception. You will reimburse any money you've received through false claims. I looked directly at Patricia. Second, you will attend mandatory family therapy sessions twice per week for a minimum of 1 year. You will also enter an alcohol addiction program and complete it successfully. Then I turned to Robert. Third, you will plead guilty to all charges and cooperate fully with federal prosecutors. You will also perform 500 hours of community service after your release from prison. Madison was crying now, but I continued. Fourth, Madison will return to college and maintain a minimum 3.0 GPA, or she will face charges for her role in the credit card fraud. Finally, I addressed the family as a whole. You will make no further attempts to contact me, my friends, my colleagues, or anyone associated with my current life without my explicit written permission. You will never again use my achievements, my reputation, or my identity for any purpose whatsoever. And, if we agree to all of this, Robert asked, then you can rent this house from me at fair market value, assuming you can find employment and meet the terms of a standard lease agreement. I will not press criminal charges for the identity theft and fraud, though I cannot control prosecution for the original embezzlement and patient endangerment charges. I stood up and closed my briefcase. You have 24 hours to decide. Tyler has my contact information. If you choose to accept these terms, you will sign this agreement in the presence of a notary public and begin complying immediately. If you choose to reject these terms, my attorney will file criminal charges by the end of the week. And if we sign the agreement but don't follow through? Madison asked through her tears. Then you'll face both the original criminal charges and additional charges for violating a legal agreement. I recommend you take this very seriously. As I walked toward the door, Tyler followed me. Elena, can I talk to you privately for a minute? We stepped outside, and Tyler closed the door behind us. I know I don't have any right to ask you for anything, he said, but I want you to know that I think what Mom and Dad and Madison did to you was wrong. Not just the graduation thing, but all of it. The way they treated your achievements, the way they talked about you, the fraud they've been committing, all of it. I appreciate you saying that, Tyler. I was too much of a coward to stand up to them when it mattered, and I'm sorry for that, but I want to do better now. If they accept your terms, I want to be part of making sure they actually follow through. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or false sincerity. Instead, I saw genuine remorse and determination. Tyler, you're welcome to stay in contact with me regardless of what the others decide. You're the only one who has shown any real understanding of how wrong this situation has been. Thank you. And Elena? I'm really proud of everything you've accomplished. Reading that magazine article about your success made me realize how incredible you are and how much our family failed you. Walking back to my rental car, I felt a sense of completion that I had not expected. For 9 months, I had built a new life based on my own worth and capabilities. Now I had returned to confront the people who had tried to diminish that worth, and I had done so from a position of complete power and control. My family would have to choose between accountability and imprisonment. Tyler would either become a genuine ally or reveal himself to be as manipulative as the others. But regardless of their decisions, I had proven to myself and to them that I was far stronger, more successful, and more resilient than they had ever imagined. The next 24 hours would determine whether my family had any capacity for genuine change, or if they were too damaged by their own choices to be saved. 22 hours later, Tyler called to inform me that my family had unanimously agreed to accept my terms. I returned to the house the next morning with a notary public, my attorney, and a stack of legal documents that would govern our future relationship. The transformation in my family's demeanor was striking. Gone was the defiance and entitlement I had encountered the day before, replaced by a subdued acceptance of their new reality. They signed every document without argument, understanding that they were agreeing to conditions that would fundamentally change their lives. Over the following months, I watched from a distance as my family began the difficult process of rebuilding their lives within the boundaries I had established. Robert pled guilty to all charges and received a 7-year prison sentence, which was reduced from the original 15 years due to his cooperation with prosecutors. Patricia entered an alcohol treatment program and began attending therapy sessions that forced her to confront the toxic family dynamics she had created and perpetuated. Madison returned to University of Delaware as a part-time student while working at a local bookstore, slowly earning credits toward completing her degree. The humbling experience of having to explain her academic gap and financial situation to counselors and professors gave her perspective she had never possessed before. But it was Tyler's transformation that proved most meaningful to me. He took a year off from college to work full-time and help maintain the family's stability while Robert was in prison. More importantly, he used that time to educate himself about emotional abuse, family dysfunction, and healthy relationship dynamics. 6 months after our confrontation, Tyler wrote me a letter that demonstrated genuine understanding of the harm our family had caused. Elena, I've been doing a lot of reading about family scapegoating and emotional abuse, and I finally understand what happened to you in our house. You were treated like the family's problem when you were actually the family's greatest success. Instead of celebrating your achievements, Everyone felt threatened by them and found ways to tear you down. I participated in that pattern by staying silent when I should have defended you. I want you to know that I understand now why you had to leave and why changing your name was necessary for your healing. This letter meant more to me than any apology my parents could have offered, because it showed that Tyler had done the internal work necessary to truly comprehend the situation, rather than simply saying what he thought I wanted to hear. Meanwhile, my life in Portland continued to flourish in ways that exceeded my wildest expectations. I was promoted to Director of Strategic Marketing for the entire company, making me the youngest executive in Green Future's history. My innovative campaigns for sustainable consumer engagement had attracted national attention, leading to speaking opportunities at conferences across the country. Marcus and I had moved in together, sharing a beautiful townhouse in Portland's Hawthorne district. Our relationship had deepened into the kind of partnership where we both supported each other's dreams while maintaining our individual identities. Marcus encouraged my career ambitions and celebrated every professional victory, while I supported his architectural projects and celebrated his creative achievements. One evening in early November, exactly 1 year after Tyler's first desperate phone call, Marcus asked me to meet him for dinner at the same Italian restaurant where Carmen had first encouraged me to stop apologizing for my success. "Elena," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand, "this past year has shown me everything I need to know about the woman I want to spend my life with. You've handled impossible family situations with grace and strength. You've achieved professional success that inspires everyone around you. Most importantly, you've shown me what it means to refuse to accept anything less than the love and respect you deserve." He pulled out a ring box and opened it to reveal a stunning emerald-cut diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the restaurant's candlelight like captured stars. "Will you marry me?" I said yes without hesitation, understanding that this moment represented not just a promise to Marcus, but a celebration of the journey that had brought me to this place. The woman who had stood alone outside her graduation ceremony would never have believed she deserved this level of happiness and success. As we celebrated our engagement, I reflected on the unexpected lesson my family's betrayal had taught me. Sometimes the most painful experiences in our lives serve as catalysts for discovering our true strength and potential. My family's inability to celebrate my achievements had forced me to learn to celebrate them myself. Their emotional abuse had motivated me to build a life where I was valued and respected. 6 months after our engagement, Marcus and I were married in a small ceremony in Portland's Washington Park, surrounded by friends who had become the family I had chosen for myself. Carmen served as my maid of honor, Tyler flew out to walk me down the aisle, and my colleagues from Green Future filled the seats where my parents should have been. During my wedding reception speech, I shared the lesson that had emerged from my darkest period. True family isn't defined by blood relations or obligation. True family consists of people who celebrate your successes, support your dreams, and treat you with genuine love and respect. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from toxic relationships, even family ones, to make space for the healthy connections you deserve. 2 years after returning to confront my family in Delaware, I established the Morrison Foundation, a scholarship fund for young adults from dysfunctional family backgrounds who needed financial assistance to build independent lives. The foundation provided not just money for education and living expenses, but also counseling services and mentorship programs to help recipients develop the confidence and skills necessary for successful independence. Tyler, who had returned to college and graduated with honors in social work, became the foundation's program coordinator. His personal experience with family dysfunction and recovery made him uniquely qualified to help other young people navigate similar challenges. "Elena, working with these scholarship recipients has shown me how many families operate the way ours did," he told me during one of our quarterly foundation meetings. "The students we help all have stories about being criticized for their ambitions or having their achievements minimized by people who should have been their biggest supporters. Your foundation is giving them permission to value themselves the way they deserve to be valued." The foundation's most successful program became our New Identity Initiative, which provided legal assistance for young adults who wanted to legally change their names as part of breaking free from abusive family systems. Over 5 years, we helped over 200 people begin fresh lives with new identities, just as I had done when I became Elena Morrison. As I write this story, 7 years have passed since my graduation day betrayal. Marcus and I now have 2 children, a 4-year-old daughter named Hope and a 2-year-old son named Justice, names we chose to reflect the values we want to instill in them. Our children will grow up in a home where achievements are celebrated, dreams are encouraged, and emotional manipulation has no place. My relationship with Tyler remains strong and genuine. He visits us in Portland twice a year, and we maintain regular contact through video calls and messages. He has become the brother I always hoped he could be. Someone who supports my happiness rather than resenting my success. Patricia completed her alcohol treatment program and has maintained sobriety for 4 years. She works as a home health aide, a job that pays far less than her former nursing position but allows her to help people in a way that doesn't put anyone at risk. We exchange holiday cards but have no other contact, which suits both of us. Madison finished college with a degree in elementary education and works as a teacher in Dover, Delaware. According to Tyler, she has matured significantly and occasionally expresses regret about her behavior during our family crisis. We have no direct relationship, but I hold no animosity toward her. Robert was released from prison 3 years ago and now works for a construction company as a regular laborer rather than a supervisor. Tyler reports that the experience of losing everything humbled him in ways that years of success never could. He completed his community service requirement by helping build homes for low-income families, work that gave him perspective on the real-world consequences of his fraudulent construction practices. The house where I grew up is now rented to a young family with 2 elementary school children. I drive by occasionally when visiting Tyler, and it brings me joy to see children playing in the yard where I once felt so alone and undervalued. The new family treats the house as the warm, loving home it was always meant to be. Looking back on my journey from Doreen to Elena, I understand that my family's betrayal was ultimately a gift, though one that came wrapped in pain and delivered at the worst possible moment. Their inability to celebrate my graduation forced me to create a life where my achievements would be valued and supported. Their emotional abuse motivated me to develop the strength and independence necessary to build genuine happiness. The greatest revenge against people who try to diminish your worth is not punishment or retaliation, but simply living well and refusing to accept their limitations on your potential. Success becomes sweeter when you've earned it independently, and love becomes deeper when you've learned to value yourself enough to demand respect from others. Sometimes walking away from toxic people, even family, is not abandonment but self-preservation. Sometimes changing your name is not running away but running toward the person you were always meant to become. And sometimes the family that truly loves you is the one you choose rather than the one you were born into. My family forgot my graduation on purpose, so I changed my name and never came back. That decision changed everything, but it changed everything for the better. I am Elena Morrison now, a successful executive, a loving wife, a devoted mother, and most importantly, a woman who knows her worth and refuses to accept anything less than the respect and celebration she deserves. The woman who stood alone outside her graduation ceremony could never have imagined the life that awaited her on the other side of that pain. But she had the courage to keep walking, and that courage led her home to herself. I hope my story resonates with anyone who has ever felt undervalued or unsupported by the people who were supposed to love them most. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to distance yourself from toxic family relationships to protect your own well-being and growth? How did you find the strength to prioritize your own happiness over family obligations? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story touched your heart or inspired you in any way, please consider liking this video and sharing it with others who might benefit from hearing about the power of choosing yourself over toxic relationships. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult circumstances and building the life you deserve. Thank you for listening to my journey from heartbreak to healing. And remember, you are worthy of celebration, support, and genuine love. Never settle for anything less than the respect you deserve, no matter who is offering you less.